They gave us the soundtrack of a generation, smooth voices, sparkling smiles, and the polished perfection of pop soul. From the radio to the big screen, Motown was magic. But what if behind the glitter there was something much darker? What if the same machine that created stars also destroyed them? What if those joyful harmonies masked lives filled with trauma, control, addiction, and pain? You know the music, but you don't know what it cost to make it. This is the story they didn't want you to hear. This is the dark side of Motown, a truth buried beneath the hits, hidden behind the legends. Motown didn't begin as a musical empire. It started with just $800, a small house in Detroit, and the relentless ambition of one man, Berry Gordy Jr., a former assembly line worker at Ford. Gordy applied the same factory principles to music that he once used on cars. His vision? To create a hit-making machine that would take black music from the streets of Detroit to the living rooms of white America. In 1959, he founded Tamla Records, which would soon evolve into Motown Records, a name inspired by Detroit's reputation as the Motor City. That same year, he released his first single, Come to Me, by Marv Johnson. The label's first real success came with Money, That's What I Want, by Barrett Strong, a hit that gave Motown early financial footing and national attention. But it wasn't just about the music, it was about the image. Gordy's artists were clean-cut, sharply dressed, and trained to appeal to mainstream America. The label created a rigorous artist development program, grooming talent not only in sound, but in speech, posture, and performance. This wasn't just a record label, it was a full-fledged pop soul factory. From the now iconic Hitsville, USA studio on West Grand Boulevard, Motown built its empire. The house band, known as the Funk Brothers, played on more #1 hits than the Beatles, Elvis, the Rolling Stones, and the Beach Boys combined. Gordy's assembly line approach churned out stars like Smokey Robinson, Mary Wells, Marvin Gaye, The Temptations, and of course, The Supremes. Motown became more than music. It was a brand, a symbol of black excellence, crossover success, and the perfect pop formula. But beneath the glossy image and catchy melodies was a much more complicated truth, one they didn't want the world to see. Marvin Gaye was more than just a Motown star. He was the soul of an era. His voice carried messages of love, war, and social justice, but behind the smooth vocals was a man carrying the weight of unimaginable pain. Gaye's tragic story began long before his rise to fame. Born into a deeply religious and volatile household, Marvin endured relentless abuse from his father, Marvin Gaye Sr., a strict and often violent Pentecostal minister. The physical beatings left scars that would shape Marvin's lifelong battle with depression, identity, and addiction. By the time I was 12, he once said, there wasn't an inch of my body that hadn't been bruised and beaten. Despite, or perhaps because of, his personal demons, Marvin's music touched millions. From sensual tracks like Let's Get It On to protest anthems like What's Going On. His art revealed a man constantly wrestling with internal storms. Yet even at the height of his success, Marvin struggled with cocaine addiction, financial troubles, and periods of reclusiveness. Then, on April 1st, 1984, just one day before his 45th birthday, Marvin Gaye was shot and killed by his own father during a heated argument in their Los Angeles home. The bullet wound proved fatal. Gaye's brother Frankie later recalled Marvin's final words, "I got what I wanted. I couldn't do it myself, so I made him do it." The public was stunned, but those closest to Marvin knew his end had been building for years. His father, later convicted of voluntary manslaughter, received a suspended sentence and 5 years of probation. It was a brutal and ironic end for a man who gave the world so much beauty and who had spent his life trying to outrun the pain he was born into. Marvin Gaye's story isn't just a tragedy. It's a reminder that even the most powerful voices can be silenced by the trauma they were never allowed to heal from. Before they were global superstars, the Jackson 5 were just a group of talented boys from Gary, Indiana, performing under the iron grip of their father, Joe Jackson. What the world saw was a wholesome, smiling band of brothers lighting up the stage with synchronized dance moves and charm. But behind closed doors, their reality was much darker. Joe Jackson was not only their manager, he was their tormentor. He ruled with intimidation and violence, often beating his sons with belts, cords, and whatever else was within reach. Rehearsals were mandatory and intense, lasting hours. If a note was missed or a step was off, punishment followed. The boys were not allowed to play with other children, and childhood joy was replaced with relentless discipline. Michael Jackson, the youngest and most talented of the group, suffered the most. As an adult, he spoke publicly about the emotional scars left by his father. He recalled how just seeing Joe would make him vomit or faint out of fear. His relationship with his father was cold and distant, built on fear, not love. He was so strict I was afraid of him. Afraid, Michael once said in a tearful interview with Oprah Winfrey. As the group became famous, the abuse didn't stop. It simply became more hidden. Their fame masked a childhood robbed by fear, anxiety, and forced perfection. The Jackson brothers were selling joy to the world while privately enduring emotional and psychological wounds that would never fully heal. Michael would go on to become one of the most iconic entertainers in history, but his adult life was often marked by loneliness, trust issues, plastic surgery, and accusations of his own. While those accusations remain controversial, what is clear is that the trauma he endured as a child under Joe's command shaped the rest of his life. The Jackson 5 may have helped define the sound of Motown, but they also exposed the dark cost of turning children into commodities. Their music was timeless, but the pain that created it was buried for far too long. The Supremes were the crown jewels of Motown, glamorous, elegant, and wildly successful. With hits like Where Did Our Love Go and Baby Love, they defined the sound of 1960s America. But behind the sparkle and synchronized smiles was a tale of betrayal, heartbreak, and tragedy that Motown kept carefully out of the spotlight. Florence Ballard, a founding member of the group, and the voice that helped launch them, endured the most tragic fall. She had a powerful voice and a vibrant presence, but over time she was pushed to the background as Diana Ross took center stage. Ballard's struggles with alcoholism, stemming from personal trauma, including the loss of her father and an alleged assault as a teenager, were used against her in the tightly controlled Motown machine. By 1967, she was forced out of the group she had co-founded and replaced. Her solo career never took off. She battled financial hardship, raising 3 children while on public assistance. In 1976, at just 32 years old, Florence Ballard died of coronary thrombosis, a result of poor health and years of decline. Diana Ross later called it a sadness that never left me, but many fans believe Ross's rise came directly at Ballard's expense. Diana Ross was undeniably talented, but her ascent created bitter internal divisions. Motown, and Berry Gordy in particular, focused all their resources on grooming Ross as a solo star. The other members, including Ballard and Mary Wilson, felt increasingly sidelined. Wilson, the only founding member to stay with the Supremes through every lineup change, often spoke publicly about the tension and betrayal within the group. Even after the original group disbanded, Mary Wilson continued to fight for recognition and the rights of background members. She became an advocate for artists' rights and wrote multiple books detailing the behind-the-scenes truth of life in Motown. In February 2021, Wilson passed away suddenly at the age of 76, just days after announcing plans to release new music. The Supremes gave the world a sound of hope and glamour, but their story is also one of power imbalance, forgotten pioneers, and the painful cost of stardom in an industry built on perfection and silence. Motown gave the world unforgettable music, an unstoppable sound that bridged racial divides, topped charts, and helped define American culture. But beneath that brilliance lies a truth too often ignored. Motown's legacy is built on more than just success. It's built on sacrifice. For every platinum record, there was a life cracking behind the scenes. For every televised smile, a trauma tucked away out of frame. Many Motown stars rose to fame, young, poor, and vulnerable. The label gave them exposure, but also demanded total control over their sound, their image, and in some cases, even their personal lives. It was a machine designed to manufacture perfection, and like all machines, it required fuel. That fuel came in the form of long hours, emotional pressure, and silence. Artists were trained to smile through pain, to suppress trauma, to obey, and if they didn't or couldn't, they were often left behind, like Florence Ballard or Tammy Terrell.